Welcome. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Sometimes as we navigate into our world, especially as we approach midlife, we find ourselves being led astray, questioning whether we've made the right decisions, looking back and sometimes finding regrets, wondering whether or not we've ever achieved some of the things that we wanted to. Maybe made the choices that led us into the direction in the first place. We kind of find ourselves counterintuitive to the way that we guide, the way we go with our lives. On the program today, we're going to be exploring that particular detail. Just wondering whether or not we've actually done the things that we said we wanted to do, made the choices we wanted to make, and are where we want to be. The book is The Message. It's a guide to being human. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is our guest, Mr. L.D. Thompson. L.D. Thompson, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Now, tell us what it was that led you to write The Message.
Basically, it is that I have been working with groups and people on a level of spirituality for the past 25, 30 years, and I realized that there was a moment that I realized, okay, there's all of this information, there's all of this transformation that's taken place in personal sessions and in group sessions, but there's no document that actually says, here, this is what I have learned, here's what I've come to understand. And so I spent probably 7 years really honing the book that you now know as The Message. And it really represents sort of the culmination of what I've been doing all this time.
Now, tell us about the insights. It's interesting because, like you said, there are so many, I guess, books or texts out there that tell us those deeper meanings about ourselves that at times, especially when we feel at our lowest point, can tend to be very inspiring and wake us up to say, wow, why am I taking things so seriously? And you tend to step forward. Tell us about that.
Well, fundamentally, I would have to say that the basic premise of the book is that we none of us have made a mistake, not one single mistake in our lives, that we are being guided by this extraordinary intelligence that rests inside each one of us, and that those things that I look back on and I say, gosh, I really wish that I had done this or that differently, that's the benefit of having moved on and learned from that particular thing that my soul brought me to. And it brought me to that lesson on purpose. So really the notion that our soul has a curriculum, that it comes in with that curriculum and drives us along our paths is what I feel very deeply, and it's what I see in my life and in the lives of others.
Now, Solano is an individual that I see quoted throughout the book. Tell us about that.
Solano is a profound guide that appeared in my life and that I have been in constant reference to for, as I said, probably the better part of 30 years. And when I first became aware of this resource, he said he's been with me throughout all of time. So I want to say that, then that's sort of one level upon which that relationship exists. But then the other level that relationship exists on is the level where I understand that there is no difference or there's no separation between you and me, between us and all individuals who inhabit this earth, or us and the Great One. So my feeling is that it's a way in which my soul is communicating to me about some of the more esoteric, if you will, aspects of life on Earth.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's go ahead and start with a really, I guess, basic premise or a beginning here. As people go through life, especially as we start to approach midlife and we look back and think to ourselves, how did I end up here? Some people may be extremely happy with where they are. Some may not be so happy about where they are. But we tend to look back and think, geez, if life had just been different, if I had just made a different choice earlier in my life, then things would be very different, which they probably would be. But one of the things that you talk about is the addiction to approval. And I think that, to me, was really key, because I think as we're in our especially late teens, early 20s, when we're moving out into adulthood, looking for individualism, looking for the ability to make choices and stand on our own as adults, we tend to make a lot of those choices based on whether or not it's the right thing in someone else's eyes. And as we get older, as we start making more and more choices, as we approach midlife, we start thinking, I'm really fed up with doing things that I think other people will approve of.
That's a topic that's very near and dear to my heart.
I could tell by how you wrote about it.
Yes. Well, the biggest challenge with living our lives in reference to other people for our understanding about what we should do is that we then really miss out on the most fundamental of messages that our souls are giving us. So navigating this particular understanding is a matter of grounding ourselves. I have to ground myself every day in what do I want to do today with this moment. How do I want to feel? How do I want to be in relationship to other people? But it's not what should I be in relationship to other people. It's what do I want to feel? And so much of that is really, the key there is, as so many, many sages and masters have said throughout time, is being current, being present tense, being right where you are in the moment, and having access in that moment to what your own individual guidance is telling you. And that's tough if you're at a party and you really are not feeling necessarily in sync with the party. What do you do? Do you just blithely go on and yuck it up and try to hit all the right marks, say all the right things, or do you just simply say, you know what, this isn't where I want to be, this isn't what I want to be doing, I'm going to leave? For many people, the challenge in that would be that they're with someone, their wife, their husband, and it would be then for them the challenge of navigating this. It's more important to me to listen to what my own guidance is telling me than it is for me to make you happy or to appear like I'm doing the right things socially that I'm supposed to do. So undoubtedly you find yourself in situations like that. You probably find yourself in situations like that sometimes on air, don't you?
I believe I do. You get to that point where you're with a guest and you think, well, I think I want to kind of push it into one direction and do this, and then all of a sudden it goes a different direction, and I think, okay, well, I'll kind of go with that. And it gets very exciting because, especially, being with a guest such as yourself, is the true. You just hit it right on the nail head. And I think one of the most difficult things that people have is the capacity to be able to be really, truly in the one moment that we really have. Mm-hmm. And a perfect example of this is, let's say that you go out, you could be, you get in trouble, whether it's with your boss or with your spouse or with the law, whatever the case may be, okay? Now, the consequence hasn't occurred yet, but you know that one's on the horizon, okay? And it could be, a couple of days, a week, or a month down the road before you know what the outcome is possibly going to be. So you live those days in those, in the situation of tense fear. Geez, I wonder what's going to happen. I should have never done that. Oh, goodness gracious! And you truly, really lose the moment that you're really in. But what's really miraculous about that is that if you can bring yourself to that center and say, well, that hasn't occurred. That's in the future, whether that ever shows up or not. And you can be in this moment and you realize, things right now just aren't that bad. It's pretty amazing, but how we get caught up in that past, of living or that future of possibility instead of the reality of now. It's quite amazing just how really cool it all actually is.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, and I would only add that so many of the things that we presume to be horrible consequences or problems or some huge pitfall that is going to happen, if we can stay present tense, seated in the reality of this moment, and you said it so beautifully, the one moment that we truly have is this moment, this moment, this moment. If we can stay there, all of the doors and possibilities and flexibility to dream ourselves into an alternate future that actually is something that we want rather than what we fear, that's where that possibility exists. But not in that gnashing of teeth and wringing of hands of, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. That's where I'm headed. I'm headed to the doghouse or the jailhouse or, wherever it is.
The big house.
The big house, exactly. Heaven forbid for everyone. But truly, that's where that creativity sits, is right there in that moment. And it's something that I know I am challenged with because we are trained to live with future consequences in mind, so much so that we then internalize that when parents are no longer there, or teachers are no longer there saying, if you don't do your studies, you're going to fail this class. Then we internalize that voice and become the one saying, if you don't take out the trash, the house is you're going to become a hoarder. And there you will be on the next reality television show,
I know it's really amazing because I know that as a young kid, as I was in school, I simply went, I was in the 4th grade, and it was about 9:30 in the morning, and I never forget this, and the next thing you know, the teacher says, you need to go ahead and go to the office. So I go to the office, and they send me into the nurse's office, and the nurse says, go ahead and go over there and lay down on that bed. And the next thing I know, I was there until 3:30 in the afternoon, and I had no idea that was going to happen. Vice principal says to me the next day, or that day, excuse me, as I was ready to go home, he says, you caused any more trouble in that class, back on that bed you'll go. And I went, oh my God, are you kidding me? Now just imagine a kid sitting in this office or in this dark room in this bed, and that's where I was for the whole day in school. After a while, I was like, Mom, I really don't think I like going to school anymore. But that would be the precursor for how I would feel, as I mentioned earlier, about those consequences on the horizon, where you started really second-guessing yourself. And it took me quite a lot of years to start realizing, wait a minute, reality is a heck of a lot kinder than I think it is. Now, that was just a circumstance that was kind of gross in the way that it unfolded. But there are many people that, although they may be roaming free, who are in prison just the same.
Yes, indeed. And I see that with people that I work with every single day. They work themselves, and so often it surrounds our economic realities.
Oh, yes.
The golden handcuffs of a job or a Social Security check or you name it, or a marriage where you're there and you think, oh my God, I don't dare make a move because this is the circumstance that I've created that allows me to survive. But it's just survival. And the risk that needs to be taken there is the risk of asking the question, am I experiencing in the moment to moment, the kind of fulfillment, the kind of freedom, the kind of opportunity that I want to experience? And if the answer is no, then there's a raft of other questions that then have to be asked in the moment. And that takes a tremendous amount of courage, again, because we're so trained to do it right and to be good citizens and to be good husbands and wives and to be good children. And, if we can take the good out of it and ask ourselves simply, soul, internal guidance system that rests right inside of me, what do you want for me? What is it that I am most wanting to feel, express, be in my life? And it's surprising how just asking the question begins the dialogue. But as the dialogue begins, there are so many ways that the soul has of communicating with us, as I'm sure you're perfectly aware. Our dreams at night, that's a way in which our soul communicates with us. Nature, you go and sit in nature and all of a sudden a huge owl appears. Well, if you follow that excitement, the excitement of, oh my God, look at that owl, if you follow that up with, well, what would that mean? What does that mean to me that an owl appeared to me in that moment when I was thinking that thought? And there's this dialogue that then begins, because that's the seeking for a deeper understanding about what your internal guidance system is driving you toward.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing that you put it that way, because I think a lot of the people this day and age, especially with such movies as What the Bleep Do We Know and The Secret, and these are certainly movies that are out there that really try to show, for instance, this is how physics, quantum physics works. So you desire, so the outcome shall be made clear. And in them, they try to show that in every single moment, you've got a multitude of choices. People say, well, that's great, that I should be able to intend a life that is this way rather than the way it is. One of the things you just talked about, for instance, is money. People tend to think that if I have more of that, I tend to have more choices. And the truth is, you have just as many choices with or without money. But it's your thoughts about that actually limit your choices. And I was just coming across something not too long ago where an exercise was put to the task that whenever you're in a situation where there is a reaction that you have in the situation, it doesn't matter whether it's good or bad, it's just a reaction. Pay attention to why you react that particular way. When you do, you have realized that you have now just limited your choices in that circumstance. And you talk about that so eloquently in your book.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I don't take full and complete credit for it. I was really just the conduit.
Oh, you just take credit for it anyway.
But that's, I love that. I love the way that you put all of that, because first of all, what you mentioned about money and also referencing What the Bleep and The Secret, the challenge that I run up against in my perception of those philosophies is that so much of what they put out there is that there is a perfect life, and in that perfect life you have all the goodies. And so that means that there are a whole bunch of people for whom their soul brings them in and says, okay, your curriculum is going to be to live a very simple life this lifetime, and in that simple life to find and express joy, gratitude, and generosity. Mm-hmm. And so for an individual like that, where that's what their soul wants for them to be experiencing, if they then, in their limited mind, watch a movie like that or take in that kind of philosophy, that could wind up with them saying, oh my gosh, I'm wrong. My life is wrong. My life is not correct as it is. everybody's life this moment. I don't care if they're sick. I don't care if they're in the big house. I don't care if they're in the middle of a divorce or if they've got a child that they're about to lose to an illness. Their life is perfect this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, taking that, and even perfection is a limiting term. Their life simply is in that moment, and it's a wholeness, it's a goodness. So taking that then and saying, okay, from here I can build a relationship to my soul's wisdom such that I can feel peace exactly where I am, so that I can feel compassion for others exactly where I am, so that I can live the soul's values. That's what, to me, is missing in those messages. And I don't mean at all to diminish the value of those messages. There's very, very important information in The Secret and in What the Bleep.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to see it go just a little bit further and really meet people right where they are,
mm-hmm.
in a place of your life just as you are is as it should be. It is as it should be.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't agree with you more. We actually have had guests on our program who were involved or co-producers of those movies, and I said, I appreciate what the intention was, but this is what I really had a problem with, because I would hear people just talking about it outside as though, well, I could just sit around and I can intend all day because this is what this movie said, and they all agreed. They said, the focus, like in The Secret, was too much on probably acquiring money, and this was by co-producers of the movie itself. And I was saying it isn't to be critical, and because I could see what the intention was, and I celebrated. I thought that was great what you guys did, but here was the outcome, and it was a lot of people just believing they could sit around and intend all day, and because of the law of attraction, that these things are supposed to happen. And they said, there should have been ways we should have kind of changed that movie a little bit to say, did you realize that life is about action? It's about movement. It's about fluidity. And that's what I really enjoy in the messages, that it is that right where you are is perfect, that if you have a goal, that you move toward that goal, but that's the perfection also. It's in the doing. It isn't about the goal itself. You always hear about that. That it's the journey, not the goal itself. The goal just gives you a direction to go to, but enjoy the journey. And you ever notice, too, when you achieve a goal, it's fulfilling, but then you kind of have this feeling of, well, now what next?
And again, so much of that is the way that we are set up in our culture, very specifically in our Western culture, to just, okay, that goal's done, now where's the next one?
Right.
And, that then sets us once again with our eyes on a future moment without that, the integrity of realizing this moment is filled with so much that is rich and with so much that is possible. And I know that so much of the rigidity that people find themselves in as far as emotion is concerned, and having an emotional life that is repetitive, where they keep coming up against the same self-judgment or the same sense of failure or the same kind of relationship over and over and over again, that is the very place where that hooks in that I want this thing and it's out there. It's in the future. It's not here. And so the quality of an unexamined moment begins to build a rigidity that people have. Am I making sense here? A rigidity that then reinforces the emotional life that they don't want.
Right.
As opposed to what you're talking about, which is really, really living fully present in your life and fully appreciating not that goal that's way out there, but what you have achieved, what you are in that given moment, because that then gives you the flexibility to not set in those patterns of emotion that I find everyone gets into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's so true, because if we actually began to trust in our inner compass, the soul, that it says, this is what we're here to do together, both of us, that you really find yourself becoming more happy, more content. You start seeing a real mystery in life, that getting up every day is worth doing, even going to sleep is worth doing, versus when I have this in place, then my life will be happy. When I have this, then I'll be a lot more content. I'll be more satisfied when this is in my life. And it's always that when this. So you're pretty dissatisfied now because those things haven't happened. You can see how you've created your own reality of dissatisfaction.
And that is so. And I have an actual, very personal experience of that's happening right now. In that I had moved from the Northwest down to Southern California while I was waiting for a house to sell. And while I was waiting for that house to sell, the thing that I love to do most, which is to, just really make a home, rehab a place and make it just really just picture perfect and beautiful. I love that. That's something I enjoy to do. My hands were tied. I could not spend a dime on anything. And so I moved into this house that was very tired. The last time it had been remodeled was probably, I'd say in the 70s. A long time ago.
Yeah, had a lot of gold and mirrors.
Yeah, sort of like that. Only in the Southern California version of it, saltillos and that sort of thing.
Right.
Sliding mirror doors. And anyway, having my hands tied for a year to not be able to do what I was accustomed to doing was one of the most powerful exercises that I've done in my life, because I just went, this is it. This is the life. This is my house. This is what I'm living in, and I love it just like it is. And so now I find that the house finally sold that I was waiting to sell. And so now I have the freedom to actually do some of the things that I've been wanting to do, and I'm approaching it completely differently than I ever have before. Mm-hmm. More slowly for one thing, more organically for another, but most importantly, I still look at the dirty corners and the tacky sliding mirror doors, and I think, you know what? It's all good. It's all just great, because I am being held in this place, and this place is supporting me in doing what I most need to do, which is be in conversation with my soul.
Mm-hmm. Now, what is enjoyable about your book, The Message, is that it isn't something that you read cover to cover. That's very obvious. It's certainly something that you put out in a place. It's right there in the open, and you just open it. You just simply open it, and you read and probably spend the day just chewing on what that particular portion of the book is. And I'm certain that was your intention, wasn't it?
It was. That emerged over time when I realized that that's what I was doing. So, I told you it took me 7 years really to hone this book down to the form that it's currently in. And in that period of time, when I would go back to the book, I would open it up really wherever, because it might have been a few days or a few weeks, in some instances a couple of months since I'd worked with the material. So I would go back and I would just open it up and I would start reading. And invariably, what I would start reading was exactly what I most needed in that moment to be dealing with in my own life. Mm-hmm. So I realized, oh my gosh, this is a way in which this book can serve people in an ongoing way, not just read it, done with it, put it on the shelf, that's that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been amazed because so many people who write to me about the book say that they keep it by their bedside and that they do just that. They'll wake up in the morning, they'll just open it randomly and take that thought into the day, or they'll do it right before they go to bed. And I feel so honored that that's the way that the book is living in people's lives. It feels very right because it was certainly how it was for me.
Mm-hmm. What I really enjoy, too, is the cover itself. Here you've got this child sitting in water, meditating. Now, that's a pretty profound image because when most people think of meditation, well, you've got to find a quiet, comfortable space. And here this kid's sitting in water with hair soaked. And think about that for a minute, folks. You go, well, so what's the relevance of that? Well, what would it be like to sit in water if it was 45 degrees outside and you tried to meditate and the only thing you can think of is, I'm freezing my booty off? But that's just the point of the whole thing, is that your thoughts are so powerful. The way your mind works is so powerful. It could take you out of moments where you see the greatest gold and the greatest joy, the greatest love, the greatest happiness, the most opportunity you'll ever have. But as we mentioned earlier, you can get to that point because of your mind not being still, that you can take away a multitude of choices that you have in any given moment. And that's what I like about that picture, is it really says, okay, this young child looks pretty content, like, oh, I'm focused, I'm going to meditate even though I'm sitting in the water. What made you choose that image?
Well, again, something I can't really take complete credit for. My publisher is an extraordinary human being. And I had sent him the manuscript because I wanted him simply to give me some advice. At the time, his singular focus that I was aware of was on publishing books on film and video production, fundraising, financing, so on and so forth. And so he agreed to take a look at my manuscript, and then he emailed me saying, can we Skype? So we got on Skype, and he said, LD, he said, I have to tell you, I opened your manuscript just to make sure that it was there and that I could open it and read it. And he said 30 pages later, I couldn't stop. Mm-hmm. And he said, I wonder if you would consider, we're just starting a new line called Divine Arts. I wonder if you would consider letting us publish your book. He said, now, we're a small publisher, and this is a new line for us. You may want to think about Hay House. You may want to think about New World. And I said, Michael, I would be so honored if you were my publisher, because I know who you are, and you know Solano. So this is something that would be a match made in heaven as far as I'm concerned. So Michael took on the task of publishing the book, and I have been so lucky to have him as the publisher, because as we were getting close to the end product, the manuscript, he said, I want you to take a look at this. I think that, I'm pretty excited about it, and I hope you will be too. And he sent me this picture. Mm-hmm. And it was a mock-up, very much like the cover as it exists. And I think that he was afraid that I would say, oh, my gosh, no, that's not at all what I had in mind. But I took one look at it, and I thought, yes, this is the cover for the book. So I really have to hand Michael the credit on that. And when people ask me, who's this little boy? I say, well, that is all of our idealized selves there on the cover.
The beginning of possibility, that's for sure.
Yes, exactly.
Well, that's great, and it's it's always such a pleasure for me to be able to have the opportunities to speak with people like yourself, people as I share what I do. We've been producing this show now for about 7.5 years, and interestingly enough, we were really the pioneers in the boomer movement, so to speak, especially when it comes to media and radio. And it was quite interesting how, a couple of years after we started, that you started seeing this I call it nonsense everywhere, because you can see people were using, it's like the green movement. You know, we're sustainable this, we're organic that, we're green this, and it's like, okay, you're just throwing a tag on there, but all you're doing is changing the wording as far as what it is you do. That's never really changed. And, it's been just a really fascinating, a wonderful ride to be able to do this and to speak with people such as yourself and bring this out. And what I've been noticing, though, is that there is more and more of what I would call the consciousness movement, that awareness. It isn't just a cliche. It isn't just a fad. It's a real movement of people that are really beginning to awaken. That's an element of our show, but I've noticed that that's happening more, that people are really saying, how did we get to where we are? This just isn't working. There's a tremendous dissatisfaction. And when you see books like The Message come out that help us get back to that inner compass, that listening to our soul, you realize the inspiration is becoming a great ripple effect, if you will, of how this world will begin to change into that movement of possibility of world peace and love. And it's very exciting.
It is exciting, and I certainly see it as well. So many, many, many people are waking up and striving to be more conscious, more compassionate, and more human.
The book is The Message. It's a guide to being human, and our guest today, L.D. Thompson. Is there a website people can find out more about your work?
Absolutely. They can go to www.ldthompson.com. That's ldthompson.com. Or they could go to www.divineartsmedia.com.
Very good. L.D. Thompson, thank you so much for joining us here on the
Thank you. I've completely
program.
enjoyed it. You're very good at what you do, and I wish you the best.
Thank you, and I wish for you the same. And make sure that you warm up the water for the child next time.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you again.
All right.
We also want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. The book is The Message. It is a guide to being human. Very practical, but extremely enjoyable as well. I'm Daniel Davis. Be sure to visit us at our website at beyond50radio.com. That is our website, the number 50, and sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter. Again, thank you for tuning in. This is Beyond 50, and remember, live your day past halfway.